But in our first story tonight, we head to Mpumalanga, where a farmer was forced to get a protection order against then Premier David Mabuza and the Mpumalanga Tourism Authority. This follows years of court appearances and political bullying.
Fred Daniel had a big dream. Having made his fortune in information technology, Daniel dreamed of creating a luxurious cross-border game reserve.
I need a very specific land, because I wanted people to come here and see mountains and rivers and valleys and grasslands.
Daniel found what he was looking for near Batplas in Mpumalanga. From the late 1990s, he bought up farms where agriculture had failed, cleaned up the land and lined up investors. The Development Bank of Southern Africa pledged 135 million rand. Hotel King Sol Kerzner and Dubai World 330 million rand. Cradle of Life was born.
Sol Kerzner was prepared to build a one and only on my project, and then he wanted to build what he called a Big Five game reserve. But he could never build the one and only because we needed the Big Five permits.
Things started going wrong when Daniel was denied the Big Five permits that would turn a game sanctuary into a world-class attraction. He got bad inspection reports from the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency. They confiscated some of his animals.
These civil servants started every trick in the book, and they would say there's a large ban on predators. And then when you go through the process of dealing with that, the next thing they'll say, oh, there's a land claim on your property.
Daniel believes he became a target when he blew the whistle that led to investigations into an alleged land claims racket where farm prices were supposedly artificially inflated to line the pockets of a few farmers, businessmen and politicians. Forensic investigations suggested former Mpumalanga Premier David Mabuza had become involved. The EFF said a fraud charge it had laid against Mabuza in 2015 is now being considered by prosecutors.
Can it be that political bullying has allowed a province as beautiful as Mpumalanga to rot, forcing some public servants to either join in the corruption or neglect service delivery?
Daniel believes Deputy President David Mabuza, then Agriculture MEC, influenced officials to block him. He believes this because some officials told him that they had orders right from the top and feared for their jobs and their safety.
Imagine if you're a civil servant, but you get an instruction from a politician that you will lose your job if you issued Fred Daniel a permit. What are you going to do? You're going to start looking for excuses. You're going to start victimizing the guy. You're going to start defaming him. And that's what happened to me.
The land claim on Daniel's property was shown to be invalid. He has spent nearly 20 million rand battling administrative blockages in court. Desperate, he turned to the 2011 Protection from Harassment Act, often used in cases of domestic violence.
Then I realized that the Harassment Act is broad. They use words like harm is defined as mental, psychological, physical, and economic harm. And all of those things we've suffered.
At the Carolina Magistrates Court, Daniel last year obtained interim protection orders against the entire executive of the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency. Boy Nobunga had just been appointed as the new CEO.
When I received the protection order, I was hardly a month, and boom, you are then a person who's harassing that person you have never met.
Some of the things that are stipulated in that is an issue of institutional harassment. Does he have merit?
There are issues of characters within the whole story. It used to be some boys' club of people that were working together.
In January, Daniel also asked the court for a protection order against then Premier David Mabuza. Appointed ANC Deputy President in December, Daniel feared Mabuza had the means to make good on alleged threats to drive him out of Batplas. Daniel took about 700 pages of forensic reports and affidavits outlining his experiences to court and was granted an interim protection order and suspended warrant of arrest against Mabuza. Jacques Hubert is Daniel's lawyer.
I think Fred is still around because of the protection order. I think he was up against, and is up against, forces that are much more powerful than he is.
A teacher by training, Mabuza rose through the ranks to be appointed Education MEC by Premier Matthews Posa in 1994. He became Premier in 2009. Daniel's concerns about his safety grew in an atmosphere of fear created by speculation about corruption and the assassination of whistleblowers and political opponents in inter-ANC conflict in Mpumalanga. Mabuza has always denied any involvement and says such allegations are a smear campaign against him. Mabuza declined coming on camera on the advice of his legal team. Daniel believes Mabuza instigated land claimants to march on his property. His land was set alight repeatedly. Business associates were also threatened.
About 10 years ago, there was a riot in front of the gates here at Cradle of Life. Mr. Mabuza arrived on the scene with a loud hailer and told the people they can stop now. He will make sure they get their land back.
And they cut my fences in broad daylight. They threatened my life. I got a phone call from the local ANC. They said, Fred, you're going to get killed. And Mabuza phoned me and he told me if I do not admit to this land claim, he cannot protect me as a community.
He has telephone records of a very heated conversation that he had with Mabuza on that day.
Daniel's court papers showed 2 phone calls between him and Mabuza that further fueled Daniel's fears that there was a conspiracy to drive him out of the area.
He's prepared to take on whoever needs to be taken on to stand by his rights. But I think that he does fear for his life, actually. They're very aware that they're living in a province where life can be very cheap.
The interim protection order forbids Mabuza to communicate with Daniel or insult, intimidate or abuse him in any way. In February, Mabuza became deputy president of the country. In the run-up to the ANC election, Mabuza's former boss, Matthew Posa, accused him of using a private militia, like the men firing into the air in this video, to enforce support from ANC branches. The 2 men have a history, and Mabuza last year unsuccessfully sued Posa for defamation.
The ANC members in Mpumalanga who don't like what they see on videos send the videos to me and said, look what's happening in this province. And we know those people there on the videos. It's not like we're guessing, you know. They're close to David Mabuza. No one has really denied what I said.
2 years ago, Fred Daniel approached Posa for advice.
He came to me with a whole bucket of problems around the area. Allegations of pieces of land being overvalued and our government being asked to pay inflated prices. I don't want my government to pay for land more than what it's worth.
He feels claims of corruption and political murders in Mpumalanga must be investigated.
Close to 17 people have died. It's not allegations. We had to bury those people and they're all our comrades. We know them. No one has been prosecuted. No inquest has been held as we sit now. There have been allegations of corruption. All I want is the law enforcement officers to investigate the allegations.
Posa, a businessman, eventually bought shares in Cradle of Life, the dream that Daniel is still fighting for in court.
So the only protection I had was the judiciary, and the only law in South Africa that could protect me so fast was this Harassment Act.
The magistrate ordered Daniel and Mabuza to come to court in February to argue whether the protection order should be made permanent or not. Mabuza's senior advocate denied any threat of harassment, said Daniel failed to prove Mabuza's direct or indirect involvement. His application was premised on unsubstantiated speculation and inadmissible evidence, and was an abuse of the Act and the court process. He said the court hadn't applied its mind and the interim protection order should be set aside.
Is Daniel's use of this law a genius move, cheeky, or is he just grasping at straws?
At the Open Democracy Advice Centre, or ODAC, Alison Tilley says citizen whistleblowers have little legal protection, unlike employees that fall under the Protected Disclosures Act.
ODAC has argued over a number of years that this is a significant gap in the legislation. We certainly have a number of instances where whistleblowers have been assassinated. So we are very concerned about their protection. This use of the harassment legislation is novel, and we're not aware of it being used in this way previously. It certainly would put an interesting remedy in the hands of whistleblowers.
Hubert urged the court to consider what this decision would mean for whistleblowers in future and said Daniel would only feel safe if his story was public. They returned to court on Monday, but the case is not over yet, and for now, the interim protection order against Mabuza stands. In a press release, Mabuza said Daniel made frivolous allegations, including defaming me, and has committed perjury.
That affidavit that I did, if there's one false statement in the affidavit, I can be arrested and go to jail for 5 years. Now, why would I do the trouble to set up a very detailed affidavit like that I don't want to tarnish anybody's reputation. I just want to protect my life, my family, and my staff.
Tourism is the cornerstone of Mpumalanga's economy, but it takes a good relationship between government and the private sector for it to survive. But can these partnerships survive the fraught relationships of the past?
Daniel dropped the protection orders against officials because he now has permits and a restored working relationship.
As a CEO coming into a mess, what did you have to go into to try and resolve this impasse between the MTPA and Fred Daniels?
We got hold of external people to go and do the investigations. He complied. We gave him the licenses.
Nobunga would not comment on the interim order against Mabuza.
The courts are better placed to deal with the matter. If there's anything that implicates any of the officials in the entity, I would act against those officials. With the interaction that I had with Fred Daniels, he struck me like a person who has passion for the environment and the ideas that he has. When implemented, I think they would benefit the province of Mpumalanga and South Africa in general.
Remember to join the show discussion on Twitter and Facebook using #CarteBlanche.